Cha-cha. Hello my friend, and welcome back to the Changeling's Call for chapter 11 today. This is a medium length one, about 10 pages. And we're back outside today, so let's see how that goes. And my apologies if there's any obnoxious sounds in the background. So chapter 11, The Schism. When the girls finally woke, it was nearly midday. They came downstairs and found Saoirse waiting for them, drinking tea. She had made eggs, scones, and fresh fruit, and apologized that the eggs were cold. Orla assured her that they were delicious, and she ate them quickly since she was ravenous from last night's exploits. Once they had eaten, Shayla helped her put together a suitable everyday outfit, which was made up of a shockingly short green skirt, a white shirt, a brown girdle, and brown leather boots. When they came back down, Saoirse had a serious expression. "I know that you're excited to be here, dear, and I wish you could just relax and enjoy yourself, but Titania sent a message saying that you must choose whether you want to return to human life or become fully Fae. And if you want to pursue life with us, you will need to choose between Seelie and Unseelie." Shayla rolled her eyes. "Mother, of course she'll be Seelie. Can you imagine her choosing Unseelie?" Saoirse frowned. "You needn't take that tone, Shayla. The Unseelie have their purpose, though we may not sympathize with them. Orla will choose what suits her spirit best." Shayla turned to Orla. "That reminds me, do you want to be called Olette now? Orla is pretty, but Olette sounds like a princess. I'm jealous." Orla looked thoughtful. "I suppose I may want to be called Olette once I earn my wings." Shayla squealed with excitement. "So you know for sure you want to be a fairy?" The serious look slipped from Saoirse's face. She was clearly happy at the thought of Orla staying. "Right, so if you want to take a tour with Aiden, that's fine, but then this evening I'd like to have you sit down with Eamon and learn some fairy history. Then tomorrow I'll teach you about some of the properties of magic." Orla really only cared that she was still allowed to go on the tour with Aiden. Shayla showed her how to call to a dove and tie a message to its foot, and they sent off a note to Aiden that she was still able to go. While they waited, they drank tea and chatted with Saoirse about having a nice dinner with everyone that night to celebrate Orla coming home, and Shayla did Orla's hair. Saoirse looked at them wistfully. "I never got to braid your hair. It was too short when you went to live with the humans. I've missed so much." "Don't worry," assured Orla. "We will have forever to make up for the lost time." Saoirse smiled, but her eyes welled with tears, so Orla got up and gave her a hug. There was a knock at the door. "That must be Aiden. See you later. Don't start cooking without me." She answered the door eagerly, and there stood Aiden, looking rather egregiously handsome in a white shirt and dark green leggings. The Fae had a different set of fashions, for certain. "Good morning, or afternoon, I guess. I got your note. Are you ready to go?" Orla looked confused. "You didn't bring a Pegasus? Are we going on foot?" Aiden looked just slightly sheepish. "I know you haven't flown with me yet, but it's the easiest way to talk to you as we go, and it will give you a good idea of what it's like to fly on your own." Orla willed her blood not to rush to her face and kept her expression neutral. "If you don't think I'm too heavy, I guess that would be fine." Aiden grinned. "I fly with Shayla all the time, and the two of you are exactly the same size. I think we're good." Orla expected it to be rather uncomfortable flying with him, but it was actually very easy. He cast a spell that bound her body to his so that even if he let go of her, she wouldn't fall. This meant that her body stayed in place without having to hold her arms and legs up, and it reminded her a bit of the invisible dance floor holding her up the previous evening. They flew all over the western country, and she noticed many rivers and mountains from their counterparts in the human realm. What she didn't see were the villages, ports, and castles that would have usually been there. Aiden pointed out several castles that she'd never seen before, beautiful buildings of white stone that flew flags with unfamiliar images. These were the castles of some fairy dukes, duchesses, and other nobles. Aiden explained that the fairy nobles were unlike the human nobles because they did not get their wealth from taxes or rent from peasants. There were no fairy peasants, only those who had not earned royal titles. The titles for the Seelie court came from doing heroic deeds, and the wealth came from the many gold and jewel mines that existed in the fairy realm. After about an hour, they came to a much larger castle that was the home of Queen Titania. In the grounds outside, Aiden flew down and set Orla on the ground. The castle's gardens were massive and contained a great variety of plants Orla had never seen. "Titania has a large number of gardeners who live here," explained Aiden, "and they are tasked not just with tending to the gardens, but also with creating new types of plants. Occasionally, Titania will choose a new plant and have us sprinkle its seeds in the human world." Orla smiled, the scent of the flowers making her feel like she was in a daydream. "That sounds like a very pleasant job. I wish people knew that the fairies help humans as well as causing mischief." Aiden shrugged. I don't know how much it helps. It's not like she watches to see if there's a failed crop and then sends something easy to grow and edible. I'm not really sure why she chooses the plants she sends. Would you like to see your flower, the Olette? Of course. So they walked to another section of the garden where there were a series of green pools crossed with stepping stones and little arched bridges. In one there was a richly hued purple flower. There were richly hued purple flowers that looked like clusters of tulip blossoms. Orla knelt at the water's edge to smell one and was rewarded with scents that reminded her of oranges and cinnamon. They're beautiful. They aren't just pretty. Listen. Aiden cupped his hands around his lips and used his magic to blow a strong gust of wind toward the flowers. Suddenly the air was full of tinkling music that was sweet and lighthearted. Orla saw the flower petals moving and realized that the flowers were singing in a way. Amazing! Haha! My parents must have known I would like to sing. Next he took her to meet some of the gardeners, and she even got to look at some of the new plants under development. They were pressed by the staff with so many samples of delicious fruits and vegetables that made up for having skipped lunch. Then they were off again, flying to a village of gnomes. Orla found it very charming, as all the buildings were made from very large toadstools or hollowed-out trees. The gnomes were not all very friendly, but the gnome children were. They were wingless, but still had magic. They looked like short humans, except for that they tended to have large noses and beady black eyes. They did not dress as finely as the fairies, preferring simple trousers and leather vests, but the women dressed their hair with elaborate leaf or flower crowns. Aiden was an excellent tour guide, filling her in on the basics without being patronizing, and constantly making her laugh with his jokes and stories. The intimidating man from her dreams was actually very approachable, though he still made her a little nervous when he made eye contact. She would have liked to see more with him, but by the time they finished with the gnome village, the sun was already low in the sky, and she said she needed to go home to help with the celebratory dinner. Soon they were back on the platform outside the treehouse. Well, I guess we can finish another time? Aiden seemed reluctant to go. Yes, definitely, Orla agreed, wondering if this had been a date or not. I had a really good time today. You're an amazing guide. Aiden grinned. All right, have a good night. Impulsively, Orla took a step forward and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Aiden looked shocked. Did you know that in fairy culture, a kiss on the cheek is more intimate than one of the lips? Orla flushed with embarrassment. Oh no, I didn't! She kissed him lightly on the lips and he pulled her close to him for a moment. When she broke away, he had an even bigger grin. Just kidding! You rogue! She whirled about and went inside the house, but he knew he wasn't really in trouble because she could hear him laughing. Still flushed and glowing, she made her way to the kitchen to find Saoirse, Danny, and Shayla already tying on aprons and pulling out ingredients. Finally you come back, and it looks like you had a good time, said Shayla with a smirk and raised eyebrows. I did, she replied evenly. I saw a lot and learned a lot. The gardens at the Queen's Castle are amazing, and I got to see Olette flowers. Saoirse looked surprised. Did you really? That's incredible. They only bloom twice a year. Maybe they knew you were coming to see them. The group happily worked together and were setting things on the table as Eamon and Finn returned from an apparently fruitless day of fishing. Everyone was in high spirits as they sat down to eat. Orla couldn't remember ever having such a lively dinner party. Nearly everyone at the table had a funny story to tell, and Finn and Eamon kept starting up rousing choruses of drinking songs. After everyone was satisfied and the dishes were cleared away, most of the party retired to the parlor to hear Danny tell more stories from the human realm. Eamon stopped Orla from joining them and bid her follow him to a room she hadn't seen yet, a cozy study with floor-to-ceiling shelves of books, another wide window, and a handsome oak desk, one of the few pieces of furniture that were not made from living wood. Orla took a seat in a comfortable armchair. Fairy history is as long as it is interesting, explained Eamon, so I will do my best to focus on the key points and what you need to know right now. He paused for a moment, lit his pipe, and pulled from it, then let out a gray smoke ring. In the beginning, our world was not divided in two. There was one beautiful world, full of plants, creatures, and the fairy folk. But after a few thousand years, we changed. We stopped living simply. There were those of us who were not content to live in the trees and eat what the land gave us. They cut down trees to make ships, and they started to farm the plants and animals. We developed the written word. All kinds of innovations were being made, and some were becoming more wealthy than others. At the same time, others were learning to use our magic in new ways. Those who preferred magic did not like the environmental impact of those who chose technology. A schism formed when those who chose technology found a leader in a fae called Igalante Mulligan, who was a very persuasive speaker, though he had little magical talent. Many who had less magical talent were drawn to his promises of wealth and success under his rule. It seemed that a war was inevitable between his people and the magical folk under the queen at that time, Queen Mab II. But our queen had a sharp mind and a very strong power. she was able to cast a spell that duplicated our world, made it a sort of twin. The twin worlds were layered right over one another so that friendships could be maintained between those who stayed and those who went to the new world. You see, they couldn't be separated entirely, according to Queen Mab. She said that if the worlds were ever entirely separated, the Fae in the original world would lose their fierceness, and those in the new world would lose their joy. So many doors were left all over, where you could easily pass from one realm to another. In time, those in the new world lost their wings and lost their magic nearly completely. The only magic they retained was love. And the Fae, we changed too. There were those who were a bit bitter about being left behind. While no one would ever admit it, there are some things the humans do well, and the fairies envy them for. These folk wanted to taunt and punish the humans. These Fae found their own leader and became the Unseelie Court, then led by King Dougal. Over the centuries, there have been times that the Unseelie have tried to rise up and overthrow the Seelie Court, but they have never succeeded. But what would happen if they did, and why have they never won? Orla interrupted. They have never won because, I believe, they are just not as resolute in their cause. It makes a difference when you have something important to fight for. The Seelie Court plays their tricks, but we keep our worlds balanced and in harmony. All the Unseelie care about is having fun and making humans miserable. I am biased, of course, but I really think the Seelie are the real fairies, and the Unseelie are Fae who should have joined the humans long ago. Their only real problem with humans is envy. Orla looked doubtful. I don't know why any Fae would be jealous of humans. A short and difficult life, always with the fear of hunger or sickness looming over you. Eamon sighed. Please don't think that life as a fairy is without its own challenges, my love. There are expectations you must meet in our world as well. There are rivalries even within the Seelie Court. I hate to tell you this, but there are some who hoped you might remain in the human realm. You are the only heir of Titania, and without you, someone else would have had the chance to claim the throne. Orla felt as if her blood had turned to ice. She knew that Titania was the older sister of her mother, but she had only just started thinking of Saoirse as her mother, so she didn't think about the fact that Titania was her aunt. An aunt with no husband or child? She thought about the huge castle and gardens and all the people at the Seelie Court. In fact, she didn't know how many Fae were in the court. The idea of being their leader was thrilling, but also very overwhelming. But Titania is young and she may live forever. Why are they worried about her successor? Eamon shook his head. Darling, she is not young. She is 700 years old, and your mother is 608 years old. I myself am 641. Once fairies reach maturity, they age incredibly slowly. You would have to be 3,000 before you started to look old. And even then, most just use some water from a youth fountain to retain their good looks. But even though our history goes back 47,000 years, we don't have any record of a fairy living longer than 5,100 years. Remember, there are ways for a fairy to die, and sometimes for the very old, they are simply ready for something else. When you choose your task, you'll need to do more than just prove you are Seelie. You must find a way to prove that you are worthy of leading the Seelie. Orla frowned. How can I prove that I'm worthy of leading them when I only just got here? I don't even have any magic yet. I don't think that matters, Eamon mused, looking out the window. I think people just want to know that you're strong and will do what's right. Eamon selected 2 books and handed them to her. A History of the Seelie and Unseelie Courts, Modes of Magic. I know you don't have a lot of time, but look them over before you sleep tonight, and you'll be better prepared tomorrow. Thank you, she said, admiring the ornate covers. She left the study and paused on the landing, hearing everyone having a good time with their game downstairs. But she turned instead toward Orla's bedroom. Shayla's bedroom. The bedroom for them. Turned on the lamp by the window seat and curled up against the pillows with her books. First she skimmed through the history book, but it was a bit dry and didn't seem very useful. She opened Modes of Magic and turned to the table of contents. It read, Contents. 1. Tree and plant magic. 2. Water and ice magic. 3. Shadow magic. 4. Good fortune charms. 5. Weather magic. 6. Music and verse. 7. Light and fire magic. 8. Healing magic. 9. Air and wind magic. 10. Illusory magic. 11. Curses and dark magic. She turned to the chapter about music. Song is a skill that nearly all Fae possess, yet only very few can do more than create a certain mild change of emotion in the space in which the music is played. For example, a sad song may bring a crowd to weeping melancholy. This is not unlike the effect of music played by humans, however, who make their music without the aid of magic. For those of more skill, songs can be used to quieten a group, to rouse them to action, even to put them to sleep. But careful modulation of pitch and volume, a song can cause the listener to lose their own will and do the bidding of the singer. This is a powerful magic and should only be used very carefully and only after considerable practice and forethought. Then the text went into more detail about how to train the voice, different stories of how it had been used, and various techniques. At the end of the chapter, there were some examples of songs, some with and some without words. Unfortunately, Orla couldn't read music. In fact, she had never seen musical notes written like this before. The traveling bards she had seen playing in her hometown always played from memory. Shayla appeared at the door, in a good mood as usual. She had won the last round of the game. Orla had to put her book aside and tell her about her tour with Aiden. "I think he's rather keen on you, Orla. He really is a good fellow. Do you fancy him at all?" Orla rolled her eyes. "I think I have bigger things to focus on than boys right now, Shayla. But sure, I like him. I barely know him, but what I know so far is pretty charming. Does he have the power to go into people's dreams?" Shayla raised her eyebrows. "No. Have you been dreaming of him?" Orla decided to admit it. "Before I met him, I dreamed of him. Twice." Shayla looked surprised, almost impressed. "In that case, it would be you who has the magic power, not him. The power of prophecy. That's pretty rare among fairies. It's usually the elves who have it. I've even heard that humans can have it, but who knows if that's real." Shayla talked for a while of how she also gave Danny a tour earlier that day, and of how they had gone for a swim and met some nymphs who had engaged in a lively game of tag, which was apparently a favorite game of the nymphs. The nymphs had been very disappointed that Danny left without giving any of them a kiss. Orla laughed. She could just picture Danny's face. Shayla seemed to have really enjoyed her time with him. Orla wondered if there might be a spark between the two of them. She didn't want to raise the issue and make Shayla feel embarrassed, though, so she put it out of her mind and listened to Shayla talk until she grew tired and they both fell asleep. And that's the end of chapter 11. Thank you so much for reading with me, and I hope you come back next time for chapter 12. Salam.